This is the Infinity Summit Group. Truth, passion, success. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Infinity Summit Group podcast. Today, we're going to be having a special guest, Jacob Boss.
Howdy.
And today, we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of minimalism and...
Among other things,
Among
of
other
course.
things, yeah, of course. And, of course, today we've got Jesse Kelch with us, Logan Kelch, Noah Kelch, and
Sup?
me, myself,
Hello.
Xavier Ewing. So, we'll get right into it. Jakey, let's begin with you. What are the pros and cons of minimalism in your eyes?
And well, first of all, let's
get
some background about this kid. So, how the heck did you begin your minimalist journey? Where did that come from? Why were you minimalist?
I think it mainly stems from me not really, not really wanting a lot of things to clutter up my life. Like, I think a little bit what my room looks like is kind of what's going on in my head. So if I don't have it clean and tidy, and like if there's too much clutter, I can't correctly visualize and think out what I'm trying to think. So that's one of the reasons.
Okay. So where did this begin? Like, cause I remember some of your journey. You had a job, you were in a certain mindset, you quit this job, and your mindset kind of started to change. Talk to us about that.
Well, so I don't know. It ended up being more in line with my searching for a different way of being and a different kind of meaning. Started listening to Alan Watts and Jordan Peterson a lot. Obviously, definitely had a heavy weighing on the scales of how that changed my life.
You see that he's releasing a new book?
Yeah.
Jordan
12
Peterson.
More rules for life?
Yeah, it's
There's
Beyond
24
Order.
rules, eh?
I'm
Yeah.
interested for that, actually. I'm excited now.
Yeah, I did see that
Can I
today.
pre-order this
Yeah.
on Audible?
I believe you can. It comes out
Next, whoa,
Okay.
Yeah, that's fast.
Yeah,
I'm pumped now.
me too. And he's officially back in the game now, Mr. Peterson.
Oh yeah, he had a rocky go of it for a minute there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He held his ground, though, like a freaking boss.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that he'd made it through. Definitely
Me too.
one of the greatest minds of our time, I think I can say quite solidly.
Mm-hmm. So tell us more about you, your journey. We were talking about that.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I think that it definitely had a lot to do with going more into that realm of life where I was focused so much on my shift in philosophy and mindset that it kind of translated into my life unbidden. And one of the ways that it showed itself was in a minimalist kind of a way, because I don't have, like, the stuff that I have in my life can fit into a very small room. And I think part of it also might be I've always had kind of a minimal amount of room to work with. So, it's definitely a toss-up between the two, but I think definitely when it changed and got more solidly into that where I was focused on the fact that I was trying to keep my belongings, very minimal was in that change.
So explain this change in psychology that you had. What spurred you on to have this change in psychology? Think deep.
His new book comes out March 2nd.
Oh, March
thank you.
2nd. Oh, wow, I was way off. What was I? Yeah.
It's close enough.
It's not next
I was
week.
way off. Wow.
Next year.
Wishful thinking, I suppose. Well, I think it definitely spurred from the way that I was going about things not working. I
Explain
was
that a
not
little.
fulfilled.
Okay.
I was the way of life that I previously inhabited was not fulfilling me enough and wasn't bringing enough meaning into my life. So I think that's what probably kicked it into gear.
Okay. Sweet. Now I know there was a time there where you were unemployed, and it was a very important time in your life. Tell us about that.
So I'd like to preface it with saying that seems a bit counterintuitive in most people's eyes. And, you know, when someone hears you're unemployed, oh, that's scary, you know? What are you doing? You know, are you not, you know, I don't know. There's just, people get very on edge when there's not security in someone's life, you know, or a sense of it.
Yeah,
And-
financial security is super important.
Oh, it's
So
it's
something to
important.
do.
Yes,
Not
something
having
to
a job,
do.
People kill themselves over that because
That's true. Suicides this year
well,
increase.
Yeah, a lot
Definitely. So I guess I'll backpedal to say definitely having a job is an important part of people's lives. But people get so focused on the fact just that they have it that they don't see it for the vehicle that it is. And so when I had that pullback time, I was like, okay, I'm focusing on a new dimension of my life, because I think there's infinite amounts of facets to this life and so many things to focus on that it's hard to juggle everything at once. This has kind of been evident in the political sphere lately, where you see so many people that, like, a lot of people have to focus their life completely on this thing, and people get fed up very quickly with that, and they just, I don't, you know, I'm not even following it anymore. I don't care. And people have, you know, so much going on in their personal lives, excuse me, that they find it hard to grasp to the political sphere. You know what I mean? There's just so many things to focus on. So bringing it back, I think I decided to focus on a different facet of my life, one arguably that I think is more important, just because, I don't know, going along with kind of my philosophy, I think there's not many things you can take from this life. I think that's quite self-evident. There's nothing physical per se that you can take with you. Mm-hmm. If there is, you know, a next chapter, which I believe in some way, shape, or form that to be true. I believe that to be true. So connections end up being more, I guess, the tender of the afterlife.
Yeah, let's talk about this other facet you were exploring a little bit.
Well, I think it kind of ended up being like, you know, that hole in my life that I had, which was, you know, not having a specific meaning enough or not being appreciative enough of the life around me, brought me to, you know, people that I previously mentioned, like Jordan Peterson, Alan Watts. There's a couple other, but those are the first two that come to my mind, and ended up being more like, I don't know, just everything kind of shifted to where my focus was on my interactions with people, rather than and what their significance is and what that means, rather than, you know, what can I get out of this. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's kind of a shift from, you know, expedience to meaning, to take Jordan Peterson's take on it, I guess.
Okay. So, my question would be, this minimalist approach, was it out of a desire or more of a necessity during this time frame when you were doing this self-exploration?
I would likely say it's a toss-up of the two, probably good percentage of each. Definitely not 50-50. I'd probably say you're looking 70-30 necessity to, you know, to option.
Yeah.
I have a question too. Do you think it would be beneficial for everybody to go minimalist, or do you think that it's kind of tailored to certain people and kind of what their lifestyle is and what they want to get out of it, like what their meaning is for it?
It's not necessary for everyone. I would recommend it. I would recommend that people at least try it once in their life for a few months, if not a year, just because I think it creates a healthy mindscape, which doesn't seem like a direct correlation, but and I guess it doesn't particularly have to be. There's a lot of people that have, you know, fairly cluttered houses that have, you know, pretty profound thoughts and can think clearly.
Yeah, it seems that in most cases the outside of a person's life reflects their inner scape, as it were.
Just like what you were talking about in the very beginning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, just like you were saying, a minimalist approach to life seems like it would declutter the mind quite a bit and allow people to really focus on what's important in life. That's that's about what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah,
Also-
definitely. And I think just to interject real quick here, I think the reason I probably need minimalism is because my head is so junked up all the time. My head looks like a hoarder's home. So I need my home to look like a minimalist place.
Well, I think that's for a lot of people too. I was talking to somebody a while ago, and they said they got, it was an older person. He was like 35, and he just been like a normal person. Had clutter in his house, just stuff he didn't really need, just an excess of stuff. And he sold all of his stuff because he went to go travel, because he moved to a different place. And he's like, dude, when I sold my stuff, like 70% of my stress went away, because the things you have create so much stress.
Yeah.
Because you have to have the upkeep on certain things. You're stressed about it always being dirty. I don't know why, but like you're just stressed because you have more stuff sometimes, and so
You don't get around to using it.
Yeah,
it all
exactly.
just deteriorates in front of you.
so
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think for me, I don't want to go full minimalist, but it's more of like I want to keep things that I know I'm gonna appreciate and I know I'm gonna use. Even if it's stuff that I don't need necessarily, like a speaker. That's one of my. I use that probably more than anything in my house, and it's not something I need, but
If it doesn't
I
have
love
a practical application, get rid of it.
well, even art. I buy art. I love art.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's
there's
gorgeous.
nothing practical about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. There you
It's
go.
useless except to look at, but I still want it. I like
Well,
it.
I guess we could make the argument that it's practical for your personal joy.
Yeah, I guess
But,
that's true.
and you use it to look at, but
It's
I
a
do
different.
enjoy
It's
it.
definitely a different type of practicality,
It
though. I
is,
think
it
is what
is.
you're touching on. It's not, it's not something active. It's not a tool of any kind. It's
No,
not something
no.
you'd use day to day. But when you look at it, it might spur something in you. So I guess it's active in a way that it acts on you,
Yeah.
which I think is definitely one of the more interesting things about art, is that it can act on you without being something, actionable.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Are you still interested in buying the cargo container home?
Oh, definitely.
Oh snap!
Yes, definitely. It's what would you say? It's strayed from my spotlight conscious, but it's definitely still in my floodlight consciousness. So
Let's talk about origin. Where the heck would you want to build a cargo container home from? Where did that idea spawn from?
oh man, well,
Pinterest, huh?
yeah, definitely. That was definitely part of it.
No
'Cause-
shame.
Zero shame. I will take that app and I will run with it. It is definitely one of my favorites. Anyway, yeah, so definitely kind of spurred from that, just seeing the idea, because I've always kind of had that minimalist viewpoint where I'm like, I really don't need very much stuff, especially for myself. I'm a bachelor at this point, so I don't have a lot of necessity for things in general or even space. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, that would be like a really efficient way to both have a place to live and to have a minimalist lifestyle, even in my budget. Because that's one of the things about this day and age, at least here in Utah, we definitely have, a pretty high price range for homes these days, I think.
Yeah, it's
Getting up there
I will tell you that
too
will
much
likely
here.
change soon.
pretty soon.
However,
As
Yes, it is
for
high
now,
right now.
and the past year or two, at
this
least.
is not a finance podcast right now.
So
No, but
do you
it
like
could
the minimalist lifestyle because you're scared to own more because of the responsibility of it, or just because you
good
genuinely like to have less? Not less, but like less in some people's eyes, but more in your eyes.
Less equals more.
More control, essentially.
Yeah. All right, that's definitely a good question. I think, like most things, it's probably a balance of both. Like, I don't like too much commitment because then I feel my hands are tied, and I like to be very mobile. I know this might reflect on you a little bit too, because you like to just go anywhere at random. When whatever Logan's whims are, that's where he's at, and
This is true.
that's part of me too, is where I'm like, if I decide, because I'm a very easily changed person. So from one day to the next, my philosophy can change drastically. So I don't like to have, too many things to tie me down. So I'm sure part of it's fear of not having that mobility. But I think probably a larger chunk is that I just enjoy that type of a lifestyle. Having, I guess it goes hand in hand, because you still having that freedom, I guess.
Okay, well, let me pose this to you too. What do you think about mobile homes? Because
I love it.
me and my buddy were actually talking about this, and this is something I'm interested in, and I will definitely do some point in my life.
Tell us about it.
I want to get a motorhome and just live in a motorhome and travel. Like,
That'd be so cool.
so cool. And
Save
I've
up
seen,
a bunch of money and just hit the road.
just go like with your partner and just be like live in a freaking motorhome that's pretty big, so it's spacious and you got furnishings. And I wanted to do this soon, but I know that's probably not very good. And I wanted to go into like the finances about it, see if it's better than like cheaper than buying like a rental property or something like that.
It's actually what my dad plans on doing with my mom.
Really?
As soon as Tom gets out of the house or is old enough, then he's going to use the passive income to support him, and he's just going to work in the trailer or
Yeah.
whatever and just travel the country.
I watched this 2-hour thing yesterday of these. They're like 25, 26-year-olds that did the same thing. They're just
Yeah, if you
Live
can
on the
work
road.
on a computer, you can do it.
Yeah, it looked so fun. I was like, that's so much freedom. You don't have to do anything. You could literally park somewhere for a year and just work and then keep going. It's like that sounds like so cool, but there's no house appreciation for, that's one of the biggest things for me is like
It only depreciates.
it only depreciates. You can't
It's definitely
like,
a
live in it and
nomad
be broke.
lifestyle.
well,
that's
if you're
for
if
sure.
you're
sick,
able
though,
to
right?
still bring income above and over that, you can still keep buying rental properties and
While you're there.
getting passive income.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if you could buy like rental properties and not own like an actual house yourself. Do you
Yeah.
think you can do that?
Oh yeah, if you have
Next year.
if you have proof of income, you can buy a house.
Damn.
Yeah, and 100 other documents, then you can buy a house.
Yeah. See, it's something I'm very interested in, and I think it would be way cool. I know several people who actually work at my work who do the same thing. This guy lives out of his truck. He just lives in a truck. He comes to work every single day. He makes it every single day, and he just lives in a truck.
How do you shower? Like,
He just goes to like
Go to
different
the
places.
gym.
I don't know how he does it. I
I
don't know.
guess the
I
gym
didn't
would
ask
work.
him that much, but like,
you're just like, okay.
yeah, it's just like, dude, yeah, I'm just chilling. I wanted to see Utah and see Park City, so I'm gonna be here for the winter. Then I'm leaving in the summer.
That's freaking sick. He's
What
gonna
the
be
heck?
cold at night.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, he's gonna be cold.
I
But-
think he might be working out like a room to rent in.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Just
I'm not
temporarily?
Sure. Yeah, I hear bits and pieces of their conversation, but
That's freaking cool.
Yeah, I definitely
And
love
way
the,
cheaper probably than renting.
yeah, exactly. And think about it. If you could like work somewhere and save up all that money instead of having all that money going to rent and all that stuff, it would like you would save so much money.
I would not suggest living out of your car though.
I would not do that either.
See, I definitely like
or
the
living
idea.
out of a
motorhome,
truck.
yes.
That would suck. Yeah.
I definitely
Trailer
like
or
the
motorhome.
idea of like nomadic travel and having, having that freedom. But I must say I'm definitely a guy that likes his amenities. Like if I can't have a nice, shower that's my own to relax in and, end the day with, something like that. I don't know. I definitely need those type of things. So I'm a minimalist, but I've seen what you're talking about. There's a show called something Tiny Homes I've watched before where they do that. It's
Tiny
like
House Nation or something.
yeah, that's what it is. I
So would you
believe.
rather a tiny house or a cargo container home?
Cargo container home just because I've kind of idolized it in my mind just because it's what I wanted from the get-go. And
It's
the more I think
eccentric.
it out, and yeah, it's a bit eccentric. I think
If you could get like an acre
mirrored.
land and just throw a couple cargo containers, it'd be literally perfect.
I would be so set.
You could even
because
expand it too.
th-
Yeah.
That's one of the big things of it too. Is like I like the idea that it's still so mobile and still so flexible because you can have one, and if that's all you need for say me a bachelor, that's all I'd need for quite a while. Then I start getting a family. All I'd really have to do if I wanted to still live in it is add another to this side, add another. You can just kind of brick it up.
So with something like that, we always, one of the first rules of investing or buying big purchases is know how you're going to get in, know how you're going to get out. Do you think something like that is resellable in Utah?
If it's pretty, you can't let it be ugly. I think it's absolutely resellable.
I
I've
would
seen
say
some cargo container homes that will look way
But
better
in
than
Utah?
traditional homes.
I
You
would
think
say
so?
definitely.
I don't know
so.
in Utah.
Is there a
but
market for it in
So-
Utah, or
so-
would you have to go out of state?
So I would, if you'd like to go, no, I would say likely so, because you can make it look almost darn nigh, it's almost what would you say?
I think because of the uniqueness
undistinguishable.
of it, you'd be able to sell it.
Yeah, you'd have somebody come along that's just one of those like
But
people that
Well,
just
do you
wants
know
different things.
Yeah,
and just
do you
wanna see it.
know a place where you can find a market for those people where like is there an online market for cargo container homes?
Yes, they
Where-
prefab sell them in a lot of places, and
Okay.
they make extreme profit margins.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty interesting, but I definitely think, going back to your previous question, that there is a resellable market for it. I've seen a bunch of. It just kind of depends on how you build it, because I've seen a bunch of cargo container homes that they almost literally just use the cargo container as the bones of the home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have normal side paneling, everything like
they
that.
don't have to do framing and stuff.
Yeah,
it's
and
just,
Yeah.
that's the
it's
framing stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper framing and kind of bones type of a thing, as far as I can tell. But there's also some houses I've seen in Park City where this guy stacked just a bunch of them, and it looks really good. I mean, it looks like it was made from cargo containers, but some people like that look. I know I like that look. It's more like modern industrialist. And oh my gosh, industrialist. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think there's a market for it. It's probably more niche, though. I think you're probably correct in that.
Yeah.
This one goes for like $56,000.
And how big is that?
What's the square footage on it?
Is it just a single?
One sec.
Not just a single.
Looks like a barn.
Oh, yeah. All
Oh,
right, looks
that-
like you got, what was that?
2 floors,
eBay.
does it say
Eight
square
40
foot?
footers, maybe?
3,000 square foot.
That's as big as this house. Square foot wise.
For $5,600. That's only the shell though. It's a shell kit.
Shell kit?
Still pretty sweet.
What does that mean?
Like there's no inner furnishings or anything like that.
And everything, like the outside, all the stuff's ready. For you
So,
to put things on.
Does it come with any plumbing or anything, or is it just cargo containers
It looks
put
like
together?
it's literally just cargo containers put together.
You likely have to pour the concrete. Well,
So you'd be,
I mean,
you'd
there's
probably be
a blueprint for
100,000, 120,000 to get it all perfect.
I bet you could swing 100.
What would you,
Sexy.
would you use a generator for that?
Depends if you're on or off grid. Like there's a lot of people that do it off grid, and I think I'd probably do a hybrid of both. The only issue is I really like the cargo container idea, but probably the biggest obstacle is getting it in or near the city. Like there's not a lot
Yeah.
of cheap land. Like I think probably for a cargo container home, your biggest expense is going to be the property. And if you need to dig a well or anything like that, if it's outside city limits far enough, things like that. So
Well, what city are you trying to get in? Because Camas has a lot of land for sale. I know that, but that's kind
Probably
of
really
far out.
expensive though,
Camas
huh?
is expensive.
Camas is expensive. Yeah.
Anywhere up there, it's really pretty.
Because
so
it's right by
expensive.
Park City.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, if you are interested in like a little adventure or whatever, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember where it is, but in Australia or something like that, where you could go for a few weeks and they'll like take you on a whole guide. It's like a backpack trip.
Don't go to Australia right now.
Yeah. But
Okay, you know what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it'd be way cool, and I want to do it
Eventually.
someday.
yeah, that would be sweet.
That would be fun.
I've
As soon
seen
as this whole
yeah.
COVID crap's over, winning. Because right now,
I've got so
the
many
second you
plans.
land, yeah, the second you land, you have to quarantine for 14 days in a hotel.
Oh, really?
Costs $3,000. You can't leave your room, and it's they provide you with 3 meals a day,
Really?
and then after that you can go in the country.
14 days.
I watched
huh?
a video on it. I was like, dude, this is
Wow,
crazy.
that's extensive.
And then you get fatty fines if you're found walking without a mask and things like that. Australia is not good right now.
They're communists.
Yep. Most of the world is communist. Britain, communist. You got to get tested twice in a week and be negative, and you can get a freedom license where you can actually walk around.
Freedom license, huh?
It's communists.
Yep.
Wow, that's disturbing.
Oh, we're not far behind. As soon as the vaccine's actually officially released, then I'll bet you're gonna have to walk around with your vaccine papers.
Yeah, I'd imagine you'd have to have some sort of token or symbol to show that you've done
Or
that.
or if you don't have to in the U.S., you got to do it to travel. It's the same
Yeah.
same crap, just like they did in World War II. All that. You got your papers? Nope. All right, jail.
In jail.
Yep. You got to have your papers to show you weren't a Jew.
It's just even too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, though, I think it's I don't know. It's just an interesting precedence. The whole COVID thing makes me wonder. If we're going to extend that to other diseases, because strictly
It's
numbers.
not other diseases I'm worried about. It's other laws.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying what I'm worried about is the precedence. I said I'm curious to see if they extend it, because if you're talking strictly numbers,
They will.
you have like other normal things like the flu and stuff that take just about as much people as COVID.
Flu cases have been way down this year, like 98%
Yeah,
down.
something like 90. It's because
Be-
it's all COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's all COVID. Everything's COVID.
Yeah, I've heard a bunch of different sources saying like when it first got started, they were saying to the hospitals, turn away pretty much anyone that's not a COVID thing, and a lot of the people, because the only income that the hospitals were really getting was from COVID, they would, mark things down as COVID that weren't. Any death that was like respiratory related, doesn't matter if they had previous conditions, anything like that. It was all just marked down as
all
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah.
Suicide is COVID. That's a
Yeah.
real thing.
If they had it when they did, or if they had it in their system when they did it, yeah. I also heard recently.
No. It's not if they have it in their system. It's if they have any symptom at all.
Oh,
It
beforehand.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't
And they
matter
suicide, it's all
what it is.
COVID.
Yeah. You have maybe a sore throat or maybe a cough, but you're dead. But you still have COVID.
That's wild.
And now you count as a COVID death. 200,000 COVID deaths, and yet there's almost no flu deaths. Suicides are way up. It's all COVID.
It's an interesting toss up between statistics, that's for sure. I definitely wonder. I don't know. I definitely wonder a lot of things, but recently I heard someone, I forget who was talking about it, but they went and they got the same test 3 times in a row, and one time
Elon Musk.
Was
Got
it Musk?
4 times, 2 came back
Oh, yeah,
positive,
4?
2 negative.
Yeah, with the exact
Nice.
same test. Definitely interesting. Did you know at the beginning ish too? They were testing the testing kits and found out like a bunch
Pre-COVID?
Of
Yeah,
a bunch
some
of
of 'em
them
already had
were infected with the COVID.
They're already positive.
See that I think it was the World Health Organization. Not that we trust them much, but they said the lockdowns will cause more deaths than the COVID. They're thinking 2 million people will starve from the lockdowns. Cause,
I wouldn't be
Really?
surprised.
Yeah.
Because of lost like income or what?
Food. Farmers and stuff can't sell their food,
Yep.
so now
Oh, yeah.
Lost
Africa's not
income,
getting
lost
their food,
produce.
and now we're gonna have a lot of people die from that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, health issues, freaking
Just reminds
No
me
food.
of communist Russia.
yeah.
Nobody gets food, everybody starves, and they die.
Jeez. Definitely. I don't know. I definitely think it sucks because it's such a big part of our day-to-day lives that everyone's so focused on it. It's hard to, I don't know, keep positive. There's definitely so many distressing things that have been going on lately, just with the whole election and with the COVID going around and everything like
Riots,
that,
everything.
and the riots. Yeah,
It's been a wild year.
it's definitely been an interesting toss-up to see how people, I don't know, kind of deal with it. Because like I was talking about earlier, I think a lot of people either are like, okay, I'm fully invested in this, and then it just kind of becomes their whole world, or it's just like, they just get so fed up with hearing about that, just, oh, fuck this didn't even, then they just kind of push it out of their mind.
Yep.
I think the scary part is it's not that the government has the power. It's the fact that the people are starting to enforce it on each other. That's what's scary. Because then they'll start ratting each other out. Oh, this person has more than 4 people at his house.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon and Washington.
That's how you get communist rule. Promise you. That's
It's just-
literally
it definitely
step
is.
by step how the Russians did it.
It's just a big witch trial, and it's perfect.
My neighbor is against what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
They go arrest the neighbor, and they arrest the dude who told, because just like
Yeah, a bunch of informants.
Yep.
I think they said
everyone's
at the time
child was an informant.
in communist Russia. At
Watch
the time,
your kids
like
in their
1
schools
one in 2 or 3 was
getting brainwashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of places got sued schools because they didn't want the parents looking in because the parents were like, "What are you teaching my kids?" Like the teacher, they sent out papers saying, "Don't watch your classes." The school did, and they were all, "Excuse, that's not how it works."
Yeah.
So then they watched every single one. Now the
Good.
teachers can't pull anything.
Good.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Stuff is BS. These kids with malleable minds don't know truth from fiction, and then they just get fed all this garbage. It's ridiculous.
Moral of the story is move to the woods, start your own farm, learn how to hunt, get a
Dig your
generator.
own well. Yep.
I think so
Oh,
much.
but you need a permit to hunt,
Oh,
even on your own land.
I forgot about that.
I think a big thing too is like, it's almost not so much that they are teaching one ideology so skewed, which they definitely are. There's in the schooling systems, they're feeding one type of shit to your kid, and it's
Yep.
definitely leaning very hard. But I would say they should be, very impartial. Like, because I would feel the same way. I think.
Yeah,
if
they should
were,
be as impartial as the news, huh?
It's
well,
supposed
as
to be a job description.
as impartial as possible. I think, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Oh.
Just because, like, even if they were going the other way, I would be against it. Where it's, if they weren't leaning so left, for a better, lack of a better term, then if they were leaning like extremely right and they were cramming that down your kids' throats, I think that would be an equally, what would you say, equally distressing proposition.
Well, the problem is that it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the school's fault, it's not the district's fault. It originates in the government. They tell the teachers what they can teach. They tell the districts what's legal to teach, what's illegal to teach. And all of that is written biased from the very beginning by a history of those who won.
Yeah.
And so it's flawed from the very beginning. There's no unbiased history, and therefore you can't go down through the ages with unbiased teaching. It's just such a flawed system.
No, definitely. But I would say just on the teacher's standpoint, there's a lot of a colored lens there. So heavily, like, you could probably negate a good percentage of the skew just starting at that first layer, not even going back up into the tertiary and
Yeah,
beyond.
you could. Possibly.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, people are people, and I don't know. It would take a big movement to have anything like that be shifted, but
I think we should redo the school system, period. Like, scratch it all. Start from scratch and start a whole new style of learning.
yeah, I definitely agree
The way
with
we're
that
doing
notion.
it is wrong. It's not right. Nobody learns anything. They're going there to
We need to go back to apprenticeships,
yeah.
individual study,
I think it should be like
thinking for yourself.
learning the basics up until like maybe high school, or even maybe before that, and after that, kids get to choose what they want to learn.
Duels of honor.
Like, yeah, finance classes should be more of a big thing. Like,
Agreed.
Considering that's how
self-discipline.
the world works and you don't get taught anything
Yeah,
in
you
school,
should
it
know
seems
how to
like
use
wrong.
credit cards, write a check, all this other stuff is just like, do your taxes. You should know tax code
Yeah.
in middle and high school. It's like, that's very important. That's when people start getting jobs. That's when you should know what you can and can't do with your taxes and how to file them and all that jazz.
yeah,
it's-
filing them. When I got out of school, I had no clue. I was like, Mom, how the hell do I
Yep.
file my taxes? I don't even know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, it's super confusing. You just have to do all this stuff. I was, what? How did I not
Yeah.
know this before?
It's definitely an interesting thing that there's not a lot of teaching of the pertinent things. You know what I mean? Like, what would be the most useful going forward in your life? There's a lot of
Algebra.
there's a lot of times where I'd talk to my teachers. I'm like, okay, and, math specifically, where I'm like, okay, but when am I going to use this in my life? They're like, you're not. You just have to do
When
it.
you're a math teacher, you're
Yeah.
going to use this.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
and they
teachers
don't-
get pissed at us for saying that. You're using it right now. Quit
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They
That's
don't
like-
even care.
That's why I
So-
don't care about this.
Well,
Yeah.
and they said the same thing to me. Like, well, you're not going to use it, but
Yeah.
you have to do it.
You
to
have
pass.
to learn it.
But you
Pass,
need to
that's it.
jump through these hoops because you're a dog.
Yeah, exactly. Here's
Woof.
your sheep. Do this.
Yeah.
You're a sheeple. Yeah, I'm done. No, thank you.
Definitely, that was definitely one of my big issues when in schooling. I was like, okay, but how can I practically use this? Because if you can give me a valid reason and a valid way to use it,
It's like, oh,
I'm
you'll
more
be
than
using
willing
these
to learn.
vectors at McDonald's to see how the burgers can fly. You know?
And like, I know this is
Oh,
personal
okay.
to me, and not everybody does this, and it's like a diss for me not going after what I truly wanted to learn. But like film studies, I think that was a super cool class. I would love to learn it, but I didn't get into it because I was so stressed about every other class and like getting an A in those classes that I couldn't even focus on what was like a class that I actually wanted to take. And it's frustrating. You're so busy thinking about it, and then it's like go to school all day and then come home and do more work.
All night.
No,
Yep.
thank you. That seems like you're just stealing a kid's childhood away from them.
Yep. I mean, one of the biggest reasons that they have high school students do high school is to keep them out of trouble.
Yeah. It's
insane.
ridiculous.
It's a giant babysitting program.
It
Yeah.
basically is, actually.
It just probably makes the kid more delinquent anyway, because he's like, you know what, fuck these teachers and fuck these people. If I
Yeah.
had my own time and my own choices, I'd probably do good things. But right now, you're forcing me to anger.
Yeah, you're making me so frustrated now that I want to go do bad things because you're frustrating me.
Yep. You caused me to do this.
But it's hard because you got to take, like, as a person, as a human being, and as an individual, you got to take blame and for everything that you do. Every action you make is your own decision. Can't blame anything on anybody.
Take accountability for it, yeah.
Yeah, accountability. That's
Well,
the
I
word
think
was
I
looking
think
for.
even I might argue that I mean that's correct in a conceptual standpoint, because like things can happen to you that aren't specifically your fault. But if you, like Jordan Peterson talks about, like when in the Bible, the Jews always thought, what did we do to incur the wrath of God, essentially. And if you're always thinking in that lens, well, then you're gonna find all of the places that you messed up along the way and better those. So even if it's not empirically true, the fruits of the labor, speak for themselves. So yeah, I think that's a truth for sure.
What's your thoughts about like religion? Sorry, I can't speak. Like with God and higher ups and all that jazz.
Like, can you? Well, I don't know. Do you want me to go
All
general?
right, that was a
I think
50-pound
I was
weight.
gonna
yeah, I was gonna say.
Well,
just
no.
can you get? No, I get what you're
We're just
saying.
totally
a whole nother
running off-
podcast,
Running
religion
off every
versus
topic, so I just
Yeah.
figured I'd bring something
Oh
to
no,
stabilize.
oh no, definitely. I just can you narrow it down just a hair? Because if not, I might have like the rest of the podcast just talking about this.
Like, what do you believe in and why? I guess it's just massive still.
Yeah, it's still pretty heavy, but I guess I can kind of parcel it off and try and eat it in
Behold,
chunks.
Logan did not shorten the topic.
It's not my fault. It's a question. We're here to talk.
All right.
Just enjoy it.
All right, so I guess I'll start even origins.
Yeah, begin at the origins.
Just start from
Is
the
there a
beginning.
God?
Oh, that much origin. I was gonna go with mine. My
Oh.
conceptual origins.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Share with the
So-
class.
Yeah, whatever you need.
Yeah. So my family pretty well. It's an obscure type of Mormonism. I'd like to
Began
start
when I
with
was
that.
born.
Yeah.
Hold up.
Awful
Do you
day.
follow the traditional what our family does, or did you kind of just run off course?
Well,
like
let's
more than
define
half
what
of
the
us?
traditional
Yeah.
our family does is,
It's
but in a kind way.
Okay.
Would
Yeah,
you like
yes.
me? Would you like
no,
me to
no, I'll do it.
undertake that?
No, we got
no
this.
big deal.
All right.
Yeah, I got it. Instead of going to church like, what all the Mormons do, we consider ourselves inactive Mormons, quote, quote. And we have, it's called Sunday school at our houses, where we read the Bible or the Book of Mormon or the Book of Jasher, any of those things with our families. And we talk about it. That's just at least what we used to do. Kind of moved on from that. And we've all learned our own paths on what we think about it, or at least for the most part. That's why I'm curious for you.
All right. So definitely, I think that's a pretty good encapsulation. So there, I always kind of had some issues with Old Testament stuff because I'd felt that they were very contradictory to the more New Testament stuff. The teachings of Christ. It was just such a opposite shift from an eye for an eye all the way to do not to others unless you want it done to yourself. Just a very different approach. So. Holding both of those things in mind, I'd always had an issue.
Isn't it interesting that the Romans, who would have had the Old Testament up until the King James version of the Bible, or they didn't have it up till then because they were destroyed before then. But it's interesting that the Romans had that view of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and that's what the Old Testament reflected. And then the New Testament was more the King James Bible, where he changed it around to more of a Catholic approach in the Bible.
Oh,
Very
it definitely
interesting.
is. It definitely is, and I think what's kind of hard for a lot of people that hold religion in high regard is they end up having to they end up having to think that they have to back their argument that it's specifically been guided by God, completely all the way along and doesn't. So then you get into the kind of the bind where people are like, okay, well, it's quite obvious that as social pressures and things changed and the world got kind of softer and more civilized, so too did the doctrine behind it.
The churches have to change with society so that they can stay relevant.
Yeah, and so I think people then feel like how do we square our belief systems?
No, I'm not. Hold on one second. I'm not dissing any church. However, that is the way of the world.
No,
much like any business that you run, if you don't stay with society, that's why all these large companies are going towards the left, because all the outspoken society is heading towards the left, or at least a majority of them with the money, and that's the same way the churches do it. Societally, they have to shift their views. Being gay a couple of years ago was against all the holy laws, and now it's entirely allowed by God because society said, no, it's allowed now.
All right, so that was a lot.
Very intriguing.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. That was a lot to bite off too. But I'm thinking from the beginning. Yes, I understood what you were saying, and I'm gonna have to say, yes, I agree. And what I was saying though is that I think people are like, okay, then how do we square it? Because then they feel like they have to. People that believe in the doctrine feel like they have to, argue from downhill up because all of the empirical evidence is coming down on them, and they feel like there's a direct contradiction there. I don't think there is. I think it's quite obvious that it's moved with the times, and churches have had to change with the times. But I think the doctrine still holds, enough pearls and truths that it is. What would you say? Almost inarguably relevant. And
now, which church are you talking about specifically?
I'm okay. So I'm going more vague. I was saying just religions in general, but
established religions in general. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
So and people that believe in it, feeling like they kind of have to fight against that tide, where it's like, well, they feel like they have to back up, every step of the way. But I think it's relevant in its own right. So that's kind of how I think of it.
Every religion has a little bit of truth to it.
Yeah, or else it wouldn't have survived. Yeah, that's what I think.
None of them are corely just perfect, like all these followers believe.
Yeah.
Or believers, and yeah.
And so yeah, I think definitely then kind of tying it back, I had that issue where I was like, I don't know, I just don't think that there's so much contradiction here that I don't think, the past text is super relevant, because I believe more wholly in the teachings of Christ, because I think it's just ends up being a more fulfilling and true way to live your life, rather than, I guess, kind of the old world terms of it, someone steals something, cut off their hand type of a thing.
So it feels better. It kind of like gives you more peace of mind.
I suppose you could say that, but I think it'd be more accurate to say it's more meaningful, at least for me specifically.
Okay.
Anyway, so so I ended up having that type of a divergence where I was like, I don't know if I believe all the things that are being said here. And, explain to me how this makes sense when, God said that he hardened Pharaoh's heart. I always had an issue with that, where I was like, okay, but well, God's preaching free will all the time. How would it make sense for him to have hardens Pharaoh's heart? That's kind of inducting on free will. So I just had a bunch of different questions like that. I think also, just as an aside, I think I believe the Old Testament has more relevance now than I did when I first kind of diverged from it. And it was 90% listening to Jordan Peterson's lectures. I didn't think of them in
biblical series. Such good lectures.
Insanely insightful. That's for certain.
Can we link those? You want to put a note?
Do you use religion kind of as like a foundation?
I use it as a tool, I think. Well, so let me
What's
finish
your
out this.
foundation?
Okay. Well, okay. Let me finish out this. Let me finish out
Couple
this
more
brief
big
journey
blocks.
quickly.
You didn't even finish the first
Yeah, I
question.
know.
You're dropping another big bomb on him.
Okay, so let me quickly finish out this brief thought. So, anyway, had issues with that. Kind of butted heads with my parents over a lot of it. I was like, I don't know if I believe any of this, or not any of it, but there was big swaths of it that I didn't feel held as much truth for me. So then I ended up kind of outsourcing, finding different truths in different religions, and I never clung to one of them. I was still pretty corely tied back to my original kind of viewpoint in religion, which I think is probably what a lot of people do. There's still that type of a weight bringing you back to what you were ingrained in. So I just kind of
For some.
for some.
It's because you're scared to go against it, right?
No, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't say that. Which I think it sounds like when I'm saying it, it would seem that way, but I would definitely not say that's not the case because,
Well, you don't sound like it. Just from how we were growing up, we were almost taught to, fear God, right?
yeah,
Kind of.
I suppose, but I don't know. Maybe for me, my parents actually like they were in the beginning of my childhood, they were pretty rigorous about it, and then when I started kind of getting into my individuality and butting heads a lot, they were still trying. And, they wanted me to believe in that, but it wasn't like with such a desperation. So they kind of released a little bit. So then when I started moving around and getting truths from different places, it wasn't like a big shock and they weren't like super opposed to it, especially because I think a lot of the truths that have pulled from different religions have been pretty coherent with my overall philosophy, which is, kind of the ideal in the teachings of Christ and kind of I don't know, then you translate that over into kind of Buddhism, and you have the archetypal figure of Buddha, which is kind of similar to Christ in his rebirth and different things like that. Anyway, so I think I've lost my train of thought because you guys had previously said some things, or Logan had been asking me some things when I was trying to finish out my origin, and I think I just finished it there. I ended up grasping from a lot of different things. Definitely started out in one place, and you were saying, what was your question last?
Do you use religion as a foundation, like as a solid base? Well, what people think is solid.
Or just something you pull from.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I think I said briefly that I thought I used it as a tool. I definitely use it as a foundation as well. I'm not going to claim that I don't. I think I use my philosophy more as a foundation. And that's my philosophy is a conglomerate of different religions and truths that I've accumulated over time. And the thing is, with a foundation, there's times where you'll kind of drop into the sea of chaos. So I don't know how solid any foundation really is. It just depends. It's solid in comparison to whatever obstacle it's faced with.
See, that's where I'll disagree with you. I feel like you can have a solid base of things you believe and truths and then you can add certain things. It's like building on like granite and then having a house on top of that, and you're building the house together, and maybe you add something in the house and then like a year later you're like, oh, that's ugly, get rid of that. But your solid foundation of what you believe and what you think is true kind of stays the same, and if it doesn't, then it kind of falls apart, and then you might have to build a new house on a new foundation somewhere.
Yeah,
but
see, I think I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that a foundation can't stay firm. I'm saying, at least for me, from what I've experienced, it definitely goes through it depending on the obstacles that are put up. So I think what you're saying is correct. For me, what I've had is I've had what I thought was my solid foundation. Then I hit an obstacle, and it tested the truths. And whatever truths were the most firm and whole stayed, and everything else sloughed off. So, I guess what you're saying is correct. It's like you can add new things, and things get dated, and you have to take it out when it doesn't work anymore. But for me, that's what I'm saying is I just think it's your foundation depends on whatever obstacle it meets.
So kind of like a storm hitting, and then whatever stands is kind of what you're left with.
Yeah.
And whatever gets destroyed is stuff that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, kind of burning off the deadwood idea. But
Okay.
Do you feel comfortable sharing the obstacle that you hit that switched your mindset with it?
There's been a lot of them. There's been a couple different crucibles in my life. I think I've been blessed enough that it hasn't been extremely tumultuous. But for me specifically, I think the first one that I hit was likely just probably a very fervent bout of depression in my middle school to high school years, and even a little bit out of high school. And I'm not going to say it's completely gone. I mean, you'll still get days, you know what I mean? But definitely for the most part, I kicked that. So that was probably the first largest thing that kind of, before that, it was just, I felt like I had a lot more naive perception of the world where I was like untested kind of. So that I had a lot of kind of baggage and truths and things that I thought were pertinent and true, and I could just run with them for my whole life. And then when I hit that, I was like, it kind of threw me into a bout of nihilism. There's like, there's no meanings, blah, blah, blah.
Explain nihilism real quick. For the
Nihilism.
listeners.
Nihilism is the belief that there's like no inherent meaning to anything. Being just is, for lack of a better definition.
But it's not just being is being. It's like, okay, if there's nothing after this life, then nothing matters.
Yeah, it's that logical jump. It's if there's no inherent meaning, then why would I do anything to?
Why would I care about
yeah.
anything?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you could kill somebody and just be like, well, what? Who cares?
Meh, laws are just man's laws.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't mean a thing.
The rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I've definitely been in that realm before, for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I hit that. I hit that pretty hard for a minute. That was for sure. But yeah. Anyway, so I went into pretty good bout of nihilism and depression. I think it's an unspoken truth of most modern boys go through, just because there's kind of a big backlash to the masculine principles of life and the masculine qualities. Like you look in a school system, they want you to sit down and not move and stare at a blackboard for hours or listen to a teacher lecture. Well, that's a lot more granting to the feminine aspect of people. But when you have, they dose up all these young boys
women
with
necessarily like to stare at a blackboard. For
no,
hours.
but it's girls have a longer attention span in most cases, and so it's that is more what I'm kind of erring to, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
Definitely the masculine side of males is put down in schools.
yeah,
You can't tussle around. You can't fight. You can't speak back to anybody. You got to be a docile sheep.
oh, and I think it's a very, very sad truth that when you do, and when you're an over rowdy boy, they, that Jordan Peterson talks about how, what would you say? How kind of evil and dark this really is if you think about it. Then, if this boy has too much energy and they just can't get him to calm down, then guess what? He has ADD, and they'll dose the ever-living crap out of him till his personality's gone. You know what I mean? Till they have no energy and they're just kind of droning zombies. It's definitely a sad truth, but I think even if it's not that aggressive, like it happens in a lot of cases, but even if it doesn't go that far, it's still very shunned and kind of frowned upon for there to be that boisterous kind of energy and I don't know, activity.
That's in everything. That's not just school. I mean, you watch the Gillette commercial. We've
Oh,
all
yeah.
seen that.
Oh, dear Lord.
Not today.
Not today.
Not cool,
cool,
man.
bro.
Not cool, yeah.
Dude.
You like girls and you're about to go talk to this one? Hell no.
It's just not. It's everywhere. They're feeding it into our TV, into movies, like video games, whatever. They got their fingers on almost everything.
Well, I think it kind of comes back to another thing that that is everything is kind of like a yo-yo. Like if you go very far, if society goes very far into masculine principles, then in response it will inevitably kind of yo-yo back to more feminine principles. And in between, it's kind of a pendulum swing with everything in life, because life is made of polarities. That's my belief,
Mm-hmm.
You can't have one thing without the other. The contrast is what makes this being. So when
Yep. The
Okay,
past.
so sorry.
Go ahead.
I've got a question. Do you think it would be good to have a perfect balance in the world of masculine and feminine? I'm not saying that's ever possible, because I don't think it is. But if it was like perfectly balanced, you think we'd have like a utopia? Do you think things would be perfect, or do you think there would still be
utopia is a
problems?
very dangerous
Don't
idea.
speak of utopias
Yeah.
here.
Flash, he says.
Okay, that's not the word I meant. I mean that
Well, I think
a perfect world. Let's just say that.
which
Like,
is in essence, I think is a utopia. I don't think it's
Do you think
bad
heaven
that
is
you said
communist? Sorry. Go ahead.
that. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
We'll talk about this in a
This
minute.
that's
Oh,
actually a
savage.
big topic
We'll talk
that
about
me and
this
my
in a
dad
minute.
had to talk about. But
Continue on that.
I have to disagree.
on
Huh?
on what?
His
Yeah.
question.
Oh,
Where you said if they're like complete and utter,
like
I
balance.
guess unity kind of thing.
Balance.
Balance. No, because no matter what, somebody's gonna want to rise to the top, and they will rise to the top.
Right. No, that's not the thing.
I think you're
said
touching
if
on
it-
dominance hierarchies
if
there,
it
but yeah, I get what
was-
you're saying.
If it is a balance,
if it is a balance, I'm not saying it's possible, because
you think that's
it's not.
ideal?
Yeah.
Or is imbalance ideal the way we've been rolling with the world?
That's a way better phrasing.
So give me
There's-
just a
there's-
moment.
There's not really. I mean, theoretically, that would be cool. That's just like imagine having world peace. It's not gonna happen ever. So
No.
yeah, it'd be cool, but won't happen.
Who says the world isn't at peace?
Me.
Me.
Really, I actually disagree with
The humans may not be at peace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
Guess
say.
who lives on the world?
I was gonna say
Us.
The humans.
the humans.
Oh my gosh, this is making me want to go into some fat philosophy. All right, so here we go. So I was gonna say I'm gonna ignore your conversation and I mean your question, and I know that's kind of douchey, but I want to touch on what you two were just talking about, which is you don't think, the world is at peace. And I heard this very interesting conversation.
Hold on, are we referring with humans or not with humans?
Both. So I'll explain.
Okay.
So I heard this very interesting conversation or lecture, I suppose, that Alan Watts gave. That was, that everything is in a constant state of balance because there is no alternative. Like everything is kind of a fluctuation.
Homeostasis is
Yes.
what that's called.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But anyway, so everything's in kind of flux always. It's a wave, it's an oscillation, but in its breadth and in its crest and its valley of
Trough.
yes, of the oscillation, it equals out to about center. Oh, I see. Yes. So what I was saying is he was talking about that, and I thought, I thought, that doesn't really make much sense. But the more he kind of went into it, he was talking about people and their proclivities. So like, how do I phrase this? Like some people feel like very discordant, and they feel like their life, is very unguided, and then there's people that are and they're very kind of entrenched in their roles. And he was talking about the playful nature of life, which doesn't seem to square if you think about it topically. But anyway, so then there's some people that are very kind of more feeling that their life is guided and that there's kind of an underlying meaning, and it kind of shades life in a game type of a perspective. It's kind of one big game where we're all putting on a bunch of different masks. And if you're thinking about it from that perspective, it's very interesting because it kind of brings this quote to mind where it's like, who said it? I think it was a Zen master of some kind, but he said, people always say they want to change the world or they want to make the world better, and I don't think it can be done. And you think at first, here you think that sounds a little bit pessimistic, but I think what he was talking on more is that there's always been such a balance that you can't really go one way or the other. If you're pulling against the reins so hard, there's someone that's giving on the other end. So it's kind of like there's always is that balance.
Yeah, I'll give you a very good example right now. In this century, we have billionaires under 30, and we have people who are so far into ignorance they couldn't care less about life. Same age.
Yeah.
Very interesting, and it keeps getting younger. The age where people have ultimate success and ultimate failure. Very intriguing.
Oh yeah, and I can touch back on your question now. That was, would it be ideal to have perfect balance? I think we are at a state of perfect balance always. Well, that's not correct. I think things are always as they should be, and that seems kind of like a cop-out.
Predestination kind of stuff?
Yes, but but that kind of harkens back to a lot of people thinking the intelligence of whatever creating force made everything is a human one. And I don't think that's the case. And I don't think it's any other kind of mind either. It's more of a, what would you say?
Energy.
Well, yeah, I guess for lack of a better term, the underlying energy and being of the universe, just kind of being itself is God in some sense. So would it be ideal to have perfect balance? I think we do. So yes.
There we go.
What is hell?
It's a place you create in your mind, it's space you live in.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Actually, me and can I say a name? He'll be fine with it. So me and Roan actually had this very conversation, and I wouldn't have thought that it would have had as much pertinence, but it definitely did. This is one of the times that I can claim that I definitely had a spiritual experience, and I think people get really what would you say, prickly at that term, but it's a kind of enlightenment that has enough meaning to you that it moves you in more ways than just topically. So anyway, we were talking about this very topic. I told Roan when we were on this job, I said, I don't think hell is a place. It just wouldn't make sense to me. Even if you go off the doctrine that, we believed in, or our families, have passed down from generation to generation, just doesn't make sense. A God that is infinitely loving, how would it make sense that he would, write off one of his children for their mistakes, their temporal mistakes in a short amount of time in comparison to eternity? Because if you compare a blip on the line of eternity to it in its span, it didn't happen. You know what I mean? It's such a quick blink that in essence, it didn't happen. So that's what I was talking with him about. I said, to me, it makes more sense that it's a state of being, because it says hell is, what would it say? Hell is eternal, but not forever, but not eternal, or something to that effect. I said, and so we ended up getting in the car, leaving. We were talking about it as we went. And I said, I think it makes more sense or it would make more sense for hell to be you getting out of this life and getting out of this very, what would you say, linear perspective, and seeing all of the moments that you fell short, that you could have done better, and you could have done something, and seeing all of your failings and all of your sins, and watching, Christ or his ideal take on all of the punishment for all of the sins that you have done. You know what I mean? Because going in front of your creator and seeing that type of a shame, you know what I mean? Or seeing your failing in their eyes would be more punishment than any sort of hell would be. And I think that's kind of harkens back to it being eternal but not forever. You would feel that shame for eternity because you didn't, in essence, fulfill what you could have.
That's a scary idea.
Yeah, but because think about
Because we're literally human. We're created to make mistakes. Why would we be ashamed of every single imperfection that we might have had?
He asked me what I thought.
Terrifying idea.
Because then you would always go to hell, because there's always something you
I
could
didn't
have
say
done
I
better.
believed in hell. He asked me what hell was. And so if I were going to say, so my specific belief of it right now, is hell real? I don't think so. But if what I think hell is, if there is a hell, is you
I see people in hell all the time. What are you talking about?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. That you
No,
can
but
create it.
serious. See,
They're living
it
in their own
exists.
hell.
It's here in the earth.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm saying it has its translation outside of this earth as well. It's an eternal thing. It's not, you can be in it here just as aggressively as you could be in the next life. But it's you knowing your own failure and kind of wallowing in it and accepting it in a sense.
Interesting.
I could see that, but then you would always have that, because everybody makes mistakes, and when you get on the other side, you'd always be in hell, because there's always something you could have done better. Always.
Yeah.
In every situation.
Yeah, and that's what my conception of hell would be.
All right,
if
right,
I thought that made any sense whatsoever, that there is a hell. I don't think there is a hell, but if there was, I think it would be something like that.
And that would take out the idea of heaven and hell then, right? Because, I don't know, I guess the perception of hell would be eternal misery, and heaven would be eternal happiness. Why would you go to a place where you would be happy all the time? Then it
that's a Wattsian perspective as well, he said.
You wouldn't know happiness.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know what it is anymore. You'd just kind of be flatlined again, because you'd have it so much.
Either
that
way,
just
you'd be flatlined. Eternal torture or eternal happiness.
Yeah.
That's
It's
the
like-
kind of a Wattsian perspective, because he talks about that too. He's like,
Here we go, getting whipped again.
yeah. Well, he says, what did he say? He said, it's like, it's like they talk about in church, this is, our heaven is going to be like church. You'll be able to worship the Creator forever and ever. And he's like, whew. Think about that, being stuck in church forever. So he's like, well, I'd much rather hell. So, I don't, like, I guess we'll go back to the hell thing. I don't think it exists. It doesn't make sense. We need to, it's just an eternal learning experience, in my opinion. We need to fail. It's a necessity. I think there are some failures that are so nebulous that they stick for a while, though. I definitely think that's the case.
What does nebulous mean? I don't
Like
know what that
dark
means.
and nefarious and like evil.
Okay.
And
From a bad place. Like you had the intent
yeah,
to do something wrong.
Well, you'd have to lower yourself into that place. And I don't know if you can specifically understand what I'm saying, because it's more of a personal thing for me. But when I'm in it, when I make a very or what would you say, ill-informed decision, or do something that goes against my nature, or is, for lack of a better sense, bad, or better word, bad, it's not like instantly I just am like, do it, and I was like, oh, that was a slip up. It's like, beforehand, there's definitely a lot of preparation, like lowering yourself into a position to be able to do that. You know what I mean? There has to be a lot of prerequisites for someone to, I don't know, for instance, do a school shooting.
Yeah.
It's not like one day they're just sitting there happy-go-lucky and they're like, you know what, might as well pull out the gat. It's like, it's more, a lot of, they feel wronged. There's a lot of self-loathing. They lower themselves into that place bit by bit with whatever.
It's better
yeah.
to not only die, but to take whoever I can with me.
Yeah, it's a very
Nihilism.
Cainian perspective.
Oh yeah.
I will spite God type of a thing.
I once had an interesting thought on heaven and hell. I got thinking about it, and I was like, man, images and thoughts of heaven and hell are throughout a lot of religions.
Almost
So-
universally.
So why the heck does it exist all throughout the world? Almost the same idea, and yet every religion is so entirely different. And I was thinking, wow, what do we all have? We all have brains that only know by comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was
Two
thinking,
hemispheres, polar.
yes, in the development of religion on this earth, I think that we ourselves created the idea of heaven and hell so that we could understand good from bad. Otherwise, we would have no conception of it.
Mm-hmm. That's where religion comes from.
Yes, and that's kind of a thought that I had, is that we created this in our own minds, and it talks about. I mean, you got heaven, you got hell, you got Satan, you got Jesus and God, whatever. And yet in a lot of the texts, Lucifer, Satan, is one of the right-hand men of God. It's very
A
intriguing.
necessity.
I think it's a role that's been created in religion. The Christ, the Satan, the Son of Man, Son of God, all this stuff, all the prophets. There are certain roles that we have created through religion that just help us to conceptualize and visualize the good from evil thing, because our brains can't know without an opposite.
Definitely makes sense to me. I think
Yeah.
a good way to maybe snap yourself out of that, well, not snap yourself out of that perception, but, well, I guess a good window into a different perspective, for me at least, has been, this was also from Mr. Watts, is he talks about, the Hindu god Shiva. She's, this crazy evil looking goddess with the head of her husband stamping on it. She's pretty much, in essence, chaos. She is an embodied chaos. And that isn't, he talks about that being an aspect of God as much as the loving Father is. So kind of to change your mind of it just being like, oh, a good and evil thing. It's like one side's good and one side's evil. It's
I didn't
all
say that's what my
interlocked. No,
perception was now.
I'm not saying that's
I
your
said it was a
perception.
thought I had.
Well, no, I know, and I'm saying that's not your perception, but I'm saying it's a perception. Like it's the whole idea of religion.
Good and evil, yes.
Yes. So the idea of God being both it just kind of twists your brain a little bit, just because I think people are very quick to like people are quick to call blasphemy when people are like, okay, but God created me though, and he also created all of the evil things. Okay, but what about Satan? Because God created him too, right? Because he created everything. So I think that's kind of, I don't know, a better conceptualization of it, for me at least, is that it's in his whole God, Shiva, whatever title you call it by, is both of those things. The creating and driving force, and the destructive and slowing force, I suppose.
Balance.
Yes.
So with all this, I am going to take it back a little bit. What kind of government do you think the ideal world would have? What kind of government would heaven have? Or have we discovered it yet? What might it look like, do you guys think?
I don't think we discovered it. I don't think we're there yet. I think the idea was there, but it just never went through, even from the beginning. That's what I think. I think just for me, my perfect like government system would be
The individual rules himself.
yeah, exactly. And if there's rules like don't kill people, obviously.
Yeah.
Unless he's on your
The
property.
Constitution and a Bill of Rights, and each man rules himself.
Yeah, that's it. Small government, almost zero taxes, and if you wanted, if there was taxes, you'd know exactly what they're going to. Exactly. Like, you could even sign up, be like, hey, I want my taxes to go to better roads. And then all your money would go to better roads, for even a specific place that you lived in,
And then things that nobody wanted to pay their taxes to wouldn't get funded.
Exactly, because that would be useless and nobody would want those things.
Oh, my.
It would be completely ruled by the people. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And the government would just be there to make sure that we're safe from other countries. Have a good military base. And yeah,
It's not a bad
basically
idea.
that's it. Have the individual rule themselves. Like,
Have everything else go through capitalism.
Yep.
Okay. All your energies, all your taxes, all your road building services, everything. You'd be hitting deadlines left and right. You'd be winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that.
You want a marriage license? Go pay a guy to do it, and then he sends it in for the official record keeping.
See, I don't even think marriage should be government anything.
That's what I
Keep
said.
your sorry, I read that wrong.
That's excuse me. That's not exactly what I said, but I said you pay a guy to do it. I was implying capitalism. You
right.
you pay a marriage license business, not marriage license business, but you pay a guy to marry you,
Okay.
and
I
then
see.
you have it in an official record that goes to the record keeping office that you all pay either taxes or you pay a certain fee capitalistically and get have your records kept.
My thing is too though, like what happens during divorce, because like usually the woman gets most of the stuff. Everybody knows that. They have the upper hand, and it's like
You get lawyers.
get out of my business.
Yeah, you get lawyers and
Lawyer up.
yep, exactly. Lawyers are capitalists too.
So I just think the government should stay out of it completely. Like it's none of your business who I marry. If I marry this person and we decide to break up, then that's between me and them.
Yeah,
What we do with our stuff, not
agreed. But for laws surrounding like we'll say taxes as it is right now, I guess in that society you wouldn't have many laws surrounding taxes
no.
or anything.
You wouldn't be taxed more depending on if you were married or not. That wouldn't even
Right.
exist. Because you get like tax breaks for getting married, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, in my government that would no. That's stupid. You just don't have that much taxes in the first place.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know.
So
I
was
do
your
know. It's
so was your
deeper.
question? What is the ideal government in your mind, or is it what would heaven be? What
Yeah.
government would heaven be?
So the
What type
ideal world in religion in people's minds is heaven, is the afterlife, is something to look forward to. What would the ideal government be of a heaven?
I think it's I think I'm going to pull another cop out. I think it's a reflection. I think you're looking at it complete and total free will. Like you look at this world here, it's like nothing's stopping you from doing anything literally. Like the only thing stopping you is other people.
And yourself.
and yourself, literally. And people will inflict harm and do evil deeds to other people. That's within their rights. But I think it, in kind of a karmic standpoint, it's going to come back around. Might not be right now, might not be foreseeable in this life, but it's going to come back around. So I think yeah, there's checks and balances, but for the most part, we're living it.
Okay.
Complete free will is essentially
But how?
essentially what it would be.
When they have so much control, because that, we're talking about government, not the human free will, because everybody's got free will, everybody's got choice, but we're talking about like a better government that's not going to stop you from doing things to your own.
I know, but we're talking about what is
Well,
the
ideal-
governing ideal of heaven.
Well,
and,
it'd be
okay. I
the
see.
ideal government, yes.
and so I said if I think we're, it's a reflection. Like what we're doing here is essentially that you have the freedom of choice to do literally anything. Doesn't mean it comes without consequence. In most cases, it comes back around, but also it's
So you're thinking no governing body, each body would govern itself.
and it does.
But
there's
then-
this,
Yes.
there's this Wattsian thing also where he's talking about it. He said there's kind of this double bind where people they need to do things spontaneously, but in that very thing, it's like to
The
do
fact
something.
that they need to do them spontaneously.
Yeah, so it kind of takes the spontaneity out of it. But he said, then people end up going and telling themselves, I'm going to change, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to quit smoking. Then the temptations are laid in your way all the more heavily. Kind of the idea he's talking about. He's like, well, you can't tell the devil, I'm going against you. I'm getting you out of my life, because then he's going to try triply hard, and it makes sense that he would know as quickly as you think it, because after all, who else do you think the devil is besides yourself? You govern your own being, I think.
Okay, and that is true. And so, as far as an established government at all, you don't think one would be appropriate in an ideal society, or would there be? Would it be a
what do you mean
communist
society?
Would it be communist? Would it be anarchist? Would it be Republican?
I don't think-
Democratic?
Well, I don't think it would exist. I
Just
don't think it would
nothing.
exist. Well,
No government.
Here's my thing is I think being after this is gonna be a lot like being now. Like there is almost no coherency except for what we make. Like say there was no governments around. How people govern themselves is essentially how it would be. And I don't think because people think a lot of the ways like
It'd be anarchy.
in some sense. I mean, I guess in some sense, I think a lot of the way
Military
people
rule.
think of heaven though is like, we're all gonna go up there and it's just gonna be pretty much the same thing, just ghost form. We're gonna live
Better,
the same.
hopefully.
Well, yeah, but
In a lot
I
of
would think
minds.
that it's a lot of the same. Just because you're gonna right now, how I conceptualize it right now, we're going through a journey. We're going through a stage of progression. We're learning things here. Or at least that's the attempt.
That's a harsh thing to think about. You die from this cruel world or whatever, and you go back to the same thing.
Oh,
That's,
some-
a,
or
it's
some-
that's a
some-
scary thought.
More
something
process.
intelligence,
similar.
though. Like maybe going to a similar thing with more intelligence, more knowing what like the spiritual is.
Well, not necessarily. So
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. But
Well,
like,
here's
it's an interesting
I
thing
actually
to
kind
think
of
about.
cling pretty hard to the more kind of like the Buddhist doctrine on this point, where it's like you can reach at any point in any life enlightenment. Then you're out of the circle. You've ascended. You've like pretty much you stop being. You've assimilated. You're one with the divine intelligence, which is creation. If not, you keep getting reincarnated. Type of like that, kind of like that. But I don't think it's so black and white as It's not like I'm going to come back as a bird. It's like I live another life to learn another lesson, and I keep moving that way. So I guess what I'm saying is you would get more lessons until you reached the state where you understood enough. So life after this will be a lot governed a lot like this, I think, because it's another step.
So just reincarnation with like just differently as people think about it.
And I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's necessarily like you're gonna go and your soul's gonna leave this body and you're gonna go into a new body. It's just another part of reality, you know.
Yeah.
I think the soul's eternal. That makes sense to me, or at
Yeah.
least whatever is the experiencer, which I think is the soul.
Yeah.
Because it's not your mind. You know, you're not. It insults people to say, you know, you're your body, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the case. You know,
Yeah.
you're what experience.
I posted something the other day that said, "You're not a human having a spiritual experience. You're a spirit having a human experience."
Yeah, definitely.
So
I think
like
that
that, yeah.
encapsulates that a lot.
So I don't know. It's kind of on the lines of what we're saying, but
This is the perfect kind of government for me. Have it be small and like socialized, not socialism, but socialized little government. Have it be specifically meant to defend against foreign terror, not domestic. Leave the domestic terror up to the people, strictly just the people. I'd say go back to the gold and silver standard. I think that would get rid of a lot of the corruption.
I love Robert Kiyosaki's view on that. He calls it God's money,
God's way.
gold and silver. Because what did he say? It's here when the earth was formed. It's gonna be here long after you, I, and the cockroaches die. It's like, yes.
And then have church and state
So
be
separate. It's
separated
incredible.
like it should be. Yeah. Have it.
So what it sounds like is
Give the power to the damn people.
sounds like
It's
what
not
you're
hard to figure
arguing
out.
for is kind of what the forefathers preached.
Yeah, how it
Just
literally
how
should
the
have been.
government, how they envisioned the government being. They're like, yeah, you pretty much it almost does nothing except mobilize people in need of defending the country. Pretty much. Yeah,
You know,
very minimal.
a lot of the founding fathers were deists, where
Describe deist.
they didn't
define
they didn't belong to a religion, or they didn't practice a religion. They believed in a creator. And
Really?
they gave divine rights. Mm-hmm.
That's
I
interesting.
know Hamilton and Washington, and actually Franklin, I think he might have been deist, but I'm pretty sure he was atheist even.
Really? That's very interesting. I had no idea. I like that, though. That definitely interesting that they all came together and conglomerated to lay down such concrete truths together with such differing opinions. I like that.
Yeah, and most of them were wealthy landowners. A lot of people talk about that, saying, "Oh, this country was founded by wealthy men." That's it. A lot of them had a lot of land because land was cheap. There's so much of
yeah.
it in the U.S. at that time. But a ton of the founding fathers, I know Washington and Hamilton, both borrowed oodles of money.
Really?
Washington had to borrow money to go out on his campaign trail. He had to borrow money to travel from where he got voted into not the White House, but where the Capitol was at the time. Tons of stuff like that. Hamilton, he ran the freaking treasury. He was slandered. They talked about him stealing money from the treasury, all this jazz. He was cleared on every account. He didn't steal a thing. His name was entirely cleared, and he had to go into a bunch of debt. His wife actually ended up paying off his debts for about 20 years after his death.
Really?
I think it was 20 years, yeah. It was a while, like, she was stuck with him.
Wow.
So, they may have been wealthy landowners, but as far as actual money goes, they were not wealthy. They were just some average Joes. And Washington didn't take he pulled a Trump and actually did not take a government pension from, like, during the time that he was at war. He did not get pay from the government.
Really?
Yep. The only thing he said they could pay for is, like, extra fees. So, like, they paid for his clothing, they paid for his food, things like that.
Pretty much board and...
But he didn't take pay. Yeah. Board and room, exactly. Travel. But he didn't take pay.
That's interesting.
Yep. Just like our good old Trump man. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Washington was a good president.
Even the first, imagine.
I wish Hamilton would have been one of our presidents. But the government would probably look a little different today had he taken it, because he was more of a federalist, believed in a stronger government.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So Washington was too at the end of his days.
That's interesting because how it usually looks is people, psychologically speaking, as people get older, their views inevitably shift more conservative.
Yeah, no. That's. I mean, you had the Federalists and you had the whatchamacallit, Jeffersonians.
That's kind of
Jeffersonians believed in, kind of power to the people, landowners, wealthy landowners. They wanted the aristocracy of the landowners to kind of run everything, not the government. And the Federalists kept believing in more central power for the government because at the time, all they had was the Articles of Confederation. Didn't have any taxing power for the government. They couldn't assemble standing armies. Took them years to assemble a standing army that wasn't a state militia. Just very, very intriguing things.
so they ended up. It seems like they ended up falling kind of in the middle. We have the central government, and a lot of the power is diverged to the people, or it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
What they ended up kind of falling on was the middle. It's not what it is now, but yeah.
And they studied ancient civilizations, most notably the Greeks, to see how to run a government and set it up, and banks and everything. They studied so many different things. These were learned men. Like, they could read, a lot of them could read Latin, just like knowledgeable boys.
It'd be so sick to know like several different languages.
Yeah, it would be.
Be a lot of work, but they say I think it's learning new languages and learning a new instrument are like some of the only things that can actually bump up your IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
All right,
This
this
just
is
trains your brain to work differently, I guess.
a bit off of what we're talking about right now, but I've heard a lot of people saying right now that we're in a new awakening. Do you think that
In what sense?
just
I
like
think so.
a spiritual awakening? But do you think we are in a huge spiritual awakening, or do you think this is another blip in history and it's just the biggest thing that's happening in like all of our lives right now, so we're seeing it as a huge awakening?
Well, what are you referring to, like, as it?
See, that I don't know how to explain it. It's just they said a lot of people are going to wake up to a lot of things. Like, I guess a lot of this is the time that's going to separate the sheep from wolves, basically.
Wheat from the chaff.
Wheat from the chaff. Yeah, that's a way better way of saying it. But like, I don't know. I've heard this from so many different people. It's not like I've heard it from grandma. I've heard it from some of my sisters. I've heard it from people I've never met that I like didn't even know, and they started talking about this new awakening that's going to happen, spiritual awakening. And it's everywhere. I don't know.
I imagine first off that you can find a great awakening in anything that you might research or look into or pay extra attention to. That being said, I do believe we're at a very important point for this century, where things are coming to a head. You got the feminism movement that started back in the late 1900s that's been progressing, and it's slowly coming to a head of, okay, now feminists and women are starting to have more rights than men.
Yeah.
And it's coming where it's going to have to balance back the other way somehow.
We're hitting a lot of extremes.
Exactly. You got the extremes of the LGBTQ plus community where they're pushing for their rights, where it's getting to where they now have more rights than other individuals. If you don't hire them at a job and you hire the white guy, it's the white male, then it's bad and it looks bad for your company. Same with the blacks, and actually I'm gonna say mostly the blacks, because the other minority communities, they do speak out, but they're not nearly as vocal.
No.
It's coming to a head where it's like, okay, this is going to start becoming too far, and then you're going to have pushback, and so we're hitting that divergent point where we're going to start seeing some interesting happenings. We already are. Yeah. I mean, you already have riots that are essentially legalized in Oregon. They'll not take legal action against you as long as you don't harm people. if you're riding, it's just like it's insanity.
I
So-
feel that.
So was your question, do you think that we're on the precipice of like a large
Is it a
new-
great awakening?
a great,
Oh,
a great awakening,
yeah.
like in the physical world or spiritually speaking?
Both.
Okay, so what I would say, spiritually speaking, and kind of with the powers of good and evil as they are, if that's the correct conceptualization, I don't think there's ever been more good or more evil. I think than like at any point, I think it's been about universal. Like, I think there's always been as much light as there has been dark, and there's always been as much good as there has been evil. Because people a lot of times be like, the good old days, there nothing bad happened then. I don't know. I think there's always been shitty things happening around the world. It's probably about equivalent margins.
And that being said, it seems that more and more people are becoming way more accepting. There's so many of the younger generation that doesn't matter what your background is, who you are, any of that. It's just like, yeah, I don't give a crap. So that's you. That's
Yeah,
great.
That's what I mean. Like,
And
this is
you're also getting the extra hate from the other side where it's like, no, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, Things like that. It's just like,
I can't
holy cow.
I can't. It's so comical to hear it said. It's almost unbelievable that he actually said that.
Well, I mean, Trump said some whack stuff too.
He said insanity things. But I'm just saying, I think it's
Oh, yeah, it's
hilarious to
crazy.
hear their quotes. You're just like, holy shit,
Crazy.
that was real.
But
just
But going back to what you were saying, I agree. Like, it's always been like that, but I feel like that doesn't mean it can't change, and that's where this is different, a different point of history.
I think if
is
we're
this
talking
any different at this point?
This point in
Then
time,
I would
is
say
different than the rest.
I would say yes, only for the fact that previously, to this point, we've had a pretty good jaunt of what would you say, peace. I think there's definitely it's going to be different because I think there's going to be a
only
lot more
wars.
turmoil. I think there's a lot of movement of like powers in the world, but I think if we're talking on a spiritual basis, I don't think there's ever been like more enlightenment or whatever you'd call anti-enlightenment, dullness than now or a million years ago or however long ago. I think it's been equal.
Well, the 60s,
fully
they
through.
had the hippie movement. They had all the hallucinogenic drugs that were coming about as popular, and they all started moving towards a spiritual enlightenment that way. And that was an era in and of itself, and which ended, well, arguably ended towards the Woodstock era, which was 1969, appropriately.
What's
I'm talking-
Woodstock? I've heard about it a lot. I don't-
Woodstock
I
was
don't
a
know.
big old,
Hippie concert.
multi-day hippie concert, tons of nudity, tons of hallucinogenics, and it was in the year 1969. So it was.
That's
yeah.
where it goes too far for me. They're all like, we're so spiritual with like, I'm like, yes, spiritual. And then they're like, let's just fuck every single person. And I'm like,
Well, that
definitely
was
where I
that was
can't be
also
on
an
that
era
train.
of contraceptives when the female as the individual who has to carry that baby, right, was beginning to discover more freedom. The contraceptive became very popular, and so now that was the era of like, oh wow, contraceptives, great, we can totally just do whoever we want.
Yeah.
And right after that, AIDS epidemic.
yeah. Yeah. There's consequences to every action.
Yes, it's
Every
very
action.
interesting.
I feel like there could be a spiritual awakening, like you say, because if you walk outside or you just like pay attention to the energy of the world,
Yeah.
you could feel the tension,
Dude,
and it's like it's gross.
3 years ago, I used to go on walks with a person who I don't want to name, but like we
Voldemort.
walked and we felt it. We felt the same thing. We're like, dude, we feel like something's gonna happen. We don't know when. It's going to happen soon, though. And then a couple of years go by, we say the same thing. Like, yeah, something's gonna happen. We don't know. Boom, we're here. This is it.
Even the people that aren't in tune with like the energies or anything, they could still feel it. So something big is going to happen. It's just
So my
It
only
is
thing,
happening.
my
Yeah, it is.
We're in the process.
it's kind of
only,
scary.
yeah, my only thing is, I think part of the energies we're talking about is the tensions of peoples. So if I'm talking strictly the basis for moral good or evil from soul to soul, I think it's probably, like I said, I think it's probably equal to how it's always been. There's probably about an equivalent distribution, and I don't believe in per se an evil soul, but in lower and higher vibrations, intensities, where people are in their consciousness. I don't think there's ever been, a distribution that is not close to equal. And if not, then I think it just barely rides like 49, 49, 51, and just kind of around that area.
The
But
push
I
and
do,
pull.
yeah, but I do think there's definitely eras where you see, times of great peace, times of upheaval and turmoil. I think we're definitely coming out of what would be considered a time of great peace.
False.
You don't think so?
No. We're not worldwide. Maybe in the United States. However, even in the United States,
I was saying more in the U.S. actually.
even in the United States, you've had civil unrest since the beginning. There's always been rebellions. There's always been riots. There's been different things. We did have a little era where it was a nation united against the terrorist countries starting in the early 2000s, and we've all been united against that. And recently, we'll say starting about '08, so we had about a 7-8 year period of unification of the country against terrorism, right, because of 9/11. And after that time, people started waking up and being like, okay, this is no longer about terrorism. We killed the terrorists. Now why are we still in the countries? Or at least the terrorist leaders, right? And so we started that unrest of, okay, our foreign policy, something is wrong. And the people are starting to know it. And then that unrest has led into we'll call it a repeat of the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s of this racial unrest. And every single election, this racial bias gets brought back up, and it's insane.
And it's getting more extreme.
All right,
Every time.
But that's what I was saying. I guess more accurately, you've more accurately voiced kind of what I was thinking is that I don't think it wasn't complete peace, but it wasn't like we were in full.
It was more peaceful than rioting, that's for sure.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
like for the majority of my lifetime, there hasn't been anything that's so up in your face like. You can feel the tension in the air as much as, the recent elections and with the it's kind of an elastic band thing where it's like, you go so far one way and then you let go, it goes the other way. So
And that was that '01 to 2016 era even, where we got our first black president. Everything is good. First we fought the terrorists, then we got our first black president. Everything's just... And then bad orange man came along. And the whole thing came in upheaval. But I don't think Trump was the cause of any of that.
I wouldn't say he was either. I
think he was the symbol of the people's thoughts at the time. Literally, we got sick of institutionalized politicians going in every time. We're like, whoa, businessman whose main motto is "You're fired." Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly what we wanted. And I'd be amazed if he didn't make it in this time. And with all the fraud that's coming about, I think people are going to start being quite disillusioned by that whole side of things.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the parts of this as well. Is like I was saying, I don't think maybe there's spiritual like enlightenment, like everyone's coming to a head type of a thing. But I think maybe like in the world. With whatever powers be, government and kind of the energies of people, more like their personalities and proclivities, you're coming to something closer to that where it's like there's been so far to one way and the other. People are perceiving themselves as so polarized when I think, if most people were to sit down and talk, it would end up being, they would agree on more than they would disagree.
And they're only perceiving themselves that way because of social media.
That's what I believe at least. But,
you see you see more of what you click on.
Yeah.
And so you each get more polarized, and where you'd actually visit with the person, you're not much different.
You become what you consume. The more you watch liberal stuff, the more that's...
Well, and they have all those search engine bots that, only show you what you click on.
Yeah.
And more of it. and more extreme versions of it, so you'll keep clicking.
So there is
holy
a
cow.
conceptual rift for sure. Like people, the gap is growing wider, but if you look at core values, I think when people talk, they agree on more than they disagree. Mm-hmm. But with that gap comes that state of unrest where it's like, it's red versus blue. It's me versus you. It's you polarize and you make teams real quick. And then that's when you get into kind of tribalist groups like that. It gets into kind of a tribalism where it's like, and violence comes very quick after that, which I think is why you're getting in a little dangerous territory. And I think everyone's kind of whispering civil war. You're getting into a little bit hot
Yeah, but
water
they've been
here.
whispering civil war for a long time. However, it does look a lot more imminent now than it has. And if Orange Man does get in and ends up winning this election, I have a feeling it's going to get way worse before it gets better.
Well, that's the only reason I'm saying right now that the whisperings are pertinent at all is because you look at the outcome, no matter which way it goes, someone's going to cry wolf, and it's setting a new precedence, because the new precedence that was set at the beginning of the Trump administration was,
not my president.
Yeah, and trying to impeach someone just because you don't agree with them, rather than them having had done something specific. Like they had their claims, but they, for the most part, they came out to be unfounded.
Yep.
And I think so. You're looking at this, and it's going to be like, it was a very smart move. If it turns out that it was actually rigged, which I think there was definitely some shady connivings going on.
They literally purchased these voting machines from communist countries. A lot of them is like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think if it.
You did hear that they're starting the transition, right?
Tell me about that.
Like they're starting to transition to Biden. Like Trump is starting to do it.
Trump is starting to come out ahead?
No, like Biden won. Essentially, like Trump is.
Oh, really?
Trump is
Getting
transitioning out of office?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Unless they pull some magic card out of their butt cheeks, which, that Kraken should have been released like a month ago when they brought it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, they did so much investigation into this fraud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Biden wins. He's our president. We do better next time. Right?
We just got to deal with what we've got.
Yeah,
at that
we
point.
dealt with Obama for 8 years. Can deal with freaking Kamala for 4.
I suppose, but anyway,
Communist Harris.
I guess we still got to see where the dice fall, but I think either way, you're going to have an interesting precedent to see and to be set. If it falls on the side of Trump and they end up being like, yeah, this was all fraud, and then he gets into office, it was a very smart ploy on whoever did the shady connivings, because they win either way. Because on one end they can say, once he gets in, look, he doesn't care about our democracy, he's a tyrant. That you're gonna have a lot of people rising up. Like, even like if I truly believed that was the case, that he was trying to overstay his welcome and stay in office and doing that wrongfully, then it would be obvious to me that yes, I have to rise up. But seeing the shady side of it, so I'm saying it's definitely a very interesting ploy to pit people against each other.
No
that's
matter
the case.
no matter which way it goes, Biden or Trump, the election is going to be not trusted by anyone for so many years to come, if not forever.
That's what I'm saying. It's setting a new precedent.
And the presidency has lost so much power.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the constant connivings of everyone against Trump. It's going to be like, and he was one of the most, we'll say, powerfully outspoken presidents that I've ever seen. Just absolutely doesn't give a care. Trying desperately to hold on to that presidential power, and that presidential seat's going to be eternally weakened because of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because now you can impeach a president for anything, and
At
now
all.
the vice president, they're trying to get that thing where the vice president can call the...
It's already there.
It's in there? Oh, so the vice president can say that the president is unfit for duty and take over.
Yeah, it's
literally
become a
what's
joke.
going to happen.
It's
with
become
Kamala.
such a
like
joke.
I said, all
Communist
these,
terrorists.
it's definitely
It's scary.
dangerous precedents being set
yeah.
all over the place, just left and right, where it's like undermining.
Goodbye to our
lot of
amendments.
things. Yeah.
Goodbye to our Constitution. Yeah.
I agree with what you were saying, though. If Trump doesn't concede for some reason and tries to stay in office, there needs to be an uprising on both sides. That's not okay for someone to try and hold power longer than what they're granted
Yeah.
or voted for.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is is if he were, I'm saying even if he does prove, without a doubt that they were, running the numbers wrong and he won, you would still have those people that would say, like the entirety of the left would say, no, he's lying. So it's literally just coming down to he said, she said, all right, and then what do you get down very quickly? It just boils down to violence, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, but seems to be. So yeah,
Looks like where we're headed.
I mean, we can all hope not, but it definitely seems like it's coming to a head. So yes, I think that it's coming to a head, but I don't think it's per se in a spiritual way.
Maybe just this physical realm.
Yeah,
So there is an
this
awakening.
There's definitely
An awakening of a
It's going
kind.
to come from Joe Biden. Antifa was literally having riots saying "F Biden," just so we're all clear here.
Antifa's
They were?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Antifa are anarchists. Did you
So,
see?
no
did you
big
s-
deal.
Yeah. Did you see?
No, they're anti-fascists.
I know,
Duh.
but they're also anarchists. Did you see? It's like, what did it say? It says, there was just a graffiti from one of their riots that said, communists get the bullet too, or pretty much everyone gets it.
Everybody gets the bullet.
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, is the case.
Nihilists. It's
Yeah.
a whole group of nihilists.
Yeah, definitely. They don't. They're not fighting for anything. Make
Just
no
against
mistake.
everything.
Yes.
They just want chaos.
Yeah, I think that's definitely for a lot of the terrorist groups.
Antifa yells "F Trump, F Biden" as they march through streets of Washington D.C. on election night. They're just
Alright.
there to cause drama or
But, yeah.
chaos.
But actually, it does set an interesting question. I think it's for a long time now we've had everyone feeling like if you were to poll people, and I don't know if this has been throughout the entirety of our country, but you've had a lot of people feeling like they're having to choose the lesser of two evils, not choosing someone that they actually
Yeah, this has
believe
been the last
with.
few
Yeah.
elections. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh.
I'm one of those people. I don't really
Well, I think most
like
people
either
feel
of them,
that way.
to be
I
honest
think
with
most
you.
people feel that way. So my question to you guys is: do you think it's something that's been in the country for a long time, where people are like, just are unsatisfied with whatever electoral choices they get, or do you think it's just been more recently, where with us feeling like we have only extremes to choose from, it's like you just have to choose the lesser of two evils.
I think it has been always there. I think it's just more extreme this time, to where like a lot more is at stake this time. Like before, it was just like, oh, okay, we got Obama. Okay, we'll deal with it for a minute. This one's like, oh crap, what's gonna happen?
We have
You know?
communism, we have capitalism.
Yeah, basically.
Running both of them. It's
Yeah.
like, oh boy.
It's bigger stakes basically. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's always been there to answer your question, but it's just bigger this time.
You just have to remember, one person can't ruin a country. Doesn't
I hope not.
I don't know if I disagree. Or,
The way it's
I've
set
heard
up,
that.
they're not supposed to be able to.
check. Yeah, they have checks and balances. We still hold the Senate, Supreme Court. Yeah, they'll pack the Supreme Court. It'll be awkward. But
I like that.
I don't.
It'll be
think
awkward.
that- I don't think America is just gonna be down with the sickness or whatever.
No.
Like, I'm pretty sure we'll be okay. 2024, retry it, do better.
I'm definitely
Trump hasn't
hoping
even
so.
officially lost yet.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I'm definitely hoping so. But definitely I see a lot of, like I said, precedents that have been set or are being set, like with Trump. Before Trump, America was like military stance throughout the nation was kind of in flux because, there wasn't a lot of like credibility almost behind the seat. There wasn't a lot of, I guess, follow throughs. Like when Trump got in it, he made it very clear, pretty much don't fuck with America. That don't fuck with me, I'll do it type stuff. and everyone
Yes, that's true.
everyone believed him because they're like, oh, he's like, yeah, you
Oh,
see
he's
this?
serious.
Yes, he literally started off his election with saying, I'm going to drop this bomb. And they're like, no, you're not going to drop it on. Oh, he just dropped it. Okay, well. So, a lot less calling of bluffs and a lot less paying off different organizations and stuff. So then coming into this new, seat, if it is handed over to Biden, which I think we can all admit is probably a pretty good likelihood. I think
Sadly.
you'll have a lot more of other powers, throwing their weight around more in response to there being a lot more leniency with kind of the guiding light of the country.
Although, Biden hasn't done much in, 47 years. Now that he will have a position of power, it'd be very interesting to see what he
does with it.
what he does, if
Yeah.
anything, or if he's another do-nothing president.
Yeah.
None of us are worried about Biden. We're worried about
It's Harris.
Harris, yeah.
Yeah, that I think we can all agree that that would be a worse fate than Sleepy Joe Biden,
She's as bad as Hillary, from what I've seen.
If not worse.
if not worse.
Yeah.
I would argue possibly worse.
It's aggressive, but
I guess kind of each of us should outline why we think it's worse though. Why we think, I guess, not Harris, but also Clinton would be a bad idea.
well, Harris because she wants communism so bad.
Yeah, I think that's
Everybody
that's
equal.
definitely for me. Is
Yeah.
her underlying principles
yeah,
are
equality of
against
outcome, not just
literally
opportunity.
America. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a pretty resounding same
Yeah.
beat, you know.
All around. I just wanted to make sure that whatever people are listening know,
Pretty
it's not just like-
resounding. No thanks.
And I think she's actually not a very good person.
She laughs like the Joker. She can't be good.
Yeah.
She's whack.
I mean,
her eyes, her smile, everything is a facade.
yeah.
It's
I
just
think
like
She
'kay.
sent people to prison and laughed about it.
yeah. Well, I think
okay.
kind of though what I'd have to say is these are the things that the left have been saying about Trump for a long time. So I judge people. I think it's more thorough, and I think you guys all agree with this. It's more thorough to judge them on their actions. I think her actions are going to very closely reflect,
communism.
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 Yes.
But with Trump, that's been the thing. He's like, look at it. He's just an evil man. It's like doesn't matter what he's been doing.
Oompa loompa
He's
bad.
just got a big ego with
Well,
him.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that
He's got a big wagon too. Have you
Yeah.
seen that thing?
Yeah.
Jesus.
His
Yeah.
butt is so thick.
But yeah, I think that's definitely a thing that they've been saying for a long time. Is there's been a lot of things that Trump's done. Like his character is the most questionable. Like
Yeah.
the things how he lives his life. Like almost you could argue he's dishonorable in a lot of ways. Having the scandal with whatever prostitute, things like that.
I think a man's personal life should not reflect in the presidency.
as do I, but that's
Unless
what
he's
I'm saying.
getting
But that's what I'm
glucked in
saying.
the White House. Bill.
Yeah. But that's what I was saying about with what Zave was saying was I just think she's a bad person. That's what I was saying. I was like that's what the argument has been for about Trump is
She's
I
bad.
just think
No,
he's a bad person.
her principles are bad.
I think her principles are bad as
Communism first, and plus, I don't think she's a very good person.
Yeah, so I stand by the communist thing, but I don't even know about her person. I don't really care about that. I care about what she's doing in her job. So yeah.
That's fair.
Well, off topic, but Jake, you've wrote a book.
Oh, I did do that.
You have wrote a book.
You've
We need to
become
talk about this.
More spiritually awoken. Like all these
Got woke.
incredible things
Wait,
that you've
go
done.
back to this book. We
Well-
need to put a link to this book.
Okay.
You
True.
can buy it on Amazon.
Oh, is it on
What's it
Amazon?
called again?
It's called The Mumblings of a Poet's Soul.
Yes.
Of a poet's soul.
I'm very melodramatic.
link
I don't
that,
know if any
please.
of you have noticed.
But what's next?
What's next? Honestly, my intent is to write.
What's the
way
most
more.
important step a man can take? The next step.
You know what? That just made me think of Grandpa Hank saying, he's like, anywhere you go, there you are. Okay, thank you.
No, it's from The Way of Kings.
All right. Next step, I would really like to write heaps more. I've been trying to
About
amp
what?
up about everything. I'm
Okay.
just kind of ravenous for it. I want to write my opinions on things. I've started trying to get a blog into motion. A lot of different things like that where I want to have books that are on purely my philosophy. I want to have some books that are, kind of a story, a sci-fi fantasy thing, and then I want to have some that I think, just are pertinent in themselves that would be something like I guess archetypal stories that I could craft, things like that. So just literally everything from whatever my opinions on something are to, an adventure story. So yeah, I want to do a lot more writing. I don't want to do it like the last book that I wrote, The Mumblings of a Poet's Soul, was not very marketable. It's not a very marketable thing. And I suppose
And why is that?
I don't think poetry is very in vogue, if we're being honest.
It's fair enough.
I just don't think it's something that is raved about. Like you look at like the most prolific poets, you can't even think of one of our time besides rap singers, I guess. You could argue. Outside of that, like the last really prolific ones were like
Shakespeare.
well, that not that far
Robert
back.
Frost.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Yes, people like that and
Edgar Allan Poe.
Leaves of Grass, who writes that?
I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a couple generations removed. I think we can say pretty
Yeah,
comfortably.
did his name start with a W?
Walt Whitman. There you go.
Yeah,
yes,
there you go.
that is it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, it's pretty safe to say they're a few generations removed. So nowadays, it's kind of maybe shifted into a different incarnation, which that might be rap, and I'd be very loath to say if it is.
So, it's a niche market, is what you're saying?
It's very, very niche. Yeah, I just don't think. Yeah, I just don't think it's in. Like I said, in vogue. I don't think it's popular anymore. There's not popular. And I think I really do love rap, and I like that type of a singing style because it's a very interesting form of expression and allows a lot of feeling and brings poetry into the modern age. But I think there's still a place for conventional poetry as it is. So yeah, it's kind of sad that it doesn't have a market, but I just don't think it has much of one. Even if I were to market it pretty hard.
I could agree. Now yours isn't just poetry. Yours is more of like poetry with lessons inside of it, correct?
I suppose it. I guess I have a little bit of both because some of it is just
Just mumblings.
Well, yes, just mumblings, purely an emotional driving to write, and others are like kind of encapsulating an idea.
So why did you write this book to begin with?
Well, I actually didn't plan on it when I started writing. Writing was just more of a tool, kind of a use of a way to kind of escape that depression that I was in for a long time, kind of a way to channel my energy, whatever, even the hate and the sadness and the anger.
Don't do drugs, kids. Write poetry.
Yes, essentially. So I just drove everything into that, and I did a lot of poetry, and then in high school, one of my teachers, I don't know if we need to blurt this out, but I'll say it anyway. His name was Mark Parker, and he was probably the most influential person along my path that encouraged me in my life, just in general. He ended up being a lot more prevalent than I realized, and now I can appreciate that. But
Have you contacted him since?
I've tried a couple times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've tried a couple times. I wanted him to see that I had written a book, and I have him in my dedication to it. So,
Okay.
But yeah, and
How can we help you contact him?
I don't know. I think it's probably going to be more heavy lifting on my part, but
Facebook? Have you tried Facebook?
I don't have Facebook. I don't really have many social media.
What's his name? Get Facebook. Mark Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I got you.
All right, thanks, Doc. But yeah, anyway, so I didn't really plan on writing this book, but I had been doing poetry like stuff for a long time. When I finally found this guy and was in his class, he was very encouraging. He was one of the first people that really lent me that type of encouragement and saw something in my writing, you know what I mean, and told me that it was unique and needed to be shared. And one of the interesting things was in his class, he would, like, to get credit for the quarter, you'd have to share. And I was very timid at the time. So I was like, but I still shared, and he was very jovial about it, and he was very encouraging to me. So it kind of gave me that, I don't know, relit that drive in me to keep going on that path. And I don't think so.
Is he skinny?
Mm-hmm. And I've kind of built on that since then. And putting it into a book form, I actually didn't really consider until quite a bit later when I was reading some of my stuff or sharing it with people, starting with Noah, I think was the first person that I really started sharing a lot of it with.
Good stuff, by the way. I
I-
highly recommend you jump on Amazon and get a copy.
Give me a moment. I'll have to come look. But yeah.
We'll find Mark Parker later.
Yes. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. Anyway, so I started sharing it, and I was like, I really like people's reactions, and I really like people being able to read these, because if someone else can kind of get insight to that same emotion and see, oh, someone else understands this, or they find a way to channel their emotion through the reading of it, then it would be a shame for it to just let it collect dust. And after you released your book,
No, this one's about you.
no, I'm saying yeah, but why? What you asked me? What made me want to make this book? And after you
okay.
released your book, it gave me a lot more drive, and I saw that it could be done, and you gave me a lot of encouragement that way as well, and that's kind of what helped spur it about. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun 3 days.
Oh yeah, it was definitely. So yeah, we're gonna have to say this. I had all of the poetry there, and I was like, oh, I want to write a book. And Noah, you tend to be just the driver of action. You're like, okay, let's get it done in 3 days. I was like, excuse me? Yep, let's do it right now. Oh, okay. So we
did it.
Yep, we did.
We got it done in 3 days.
Yes, threw it all together. There's definitely some spelling mistakes in there and stuff, but
Yep.
it's got
Threw
the
it
core
together,
of what I
edited.
wanted.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm. It was fun.
it was a blast. Yeah.
Couple late nights, we're good.
Oh yeah.
That's how it be sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. When the creation is flowing, you can't stop it. So yes, please, if you feel like reading some good poetry and learning some good lessons, check it out. Mumblings of a Poet's Soul, you say?
Yes.
On
Thanks
Amazon.
for the shout out.
Yep, we'll link it, get that done, and we look forward to your next books as well. So that definitely blossomed from the pros and cons of minimalism, but that's what we plan to do. We want to learn about Jacob, we want to know all about him, and we want the listeners to know about him as well, and kind of what a special person he is, and a great individual. So, yeah, do you have anything else you might want to share for the listeners?
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate, and I'm actually quite flattered that you guys have had me on, and
He's our first guest.
First
yeah,
guest.
even the first, that christening number 1 over here. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just pretty much I'm
He
flattered.
will be
and
getting an
appreciate
Infinity
it.
Summit T-shirt.
Yes, I will be getting the merch.
And if y'all want to get some merch, it is on our website, infinitysummitgroup.com. And just go to the merchandise tab. There's tons of choices. And on the homepage, there's a huge list of Audible books that we might recommend. Next week, we're going over, what was the book again? It was The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. That's on that main page as well. And we will see you guys next week.
See you.
Alrighty.